This is Adeel Khan, the stem cell doctor to the stars.
Kim and Khloe Kardashian had stem cells done with me in Mexico. All the headlines are saying that these are illegal in the US. This is not quite true.
Here he is with Gary Lynham, a convicted felon who was sentenced to 4 years in jail for drug trafficking and, upon release, reinvented himself as a biohacker under the brand Human Garage. In this video, they're talking about Khan's signature stem cell treatment.
Like for me, they're expensive to just purchase from the manufacturer. Right. So these are what are called Dazawa Muse cells, which is from the Japanese scientists who discovered them and the company that owns the patent. And so we work directly with that scientist to get these cells, but they are pricey.
That brown vial, which looks to me like a horse suppository, is what Khan's reel identifies as stem cells, which means that it's some sort of variation of the brew that almost killed the functional medicine doctor Mark Hyman.
Because I almost died.
Not only that, but when I showed the picture to the company that invented the specific type of stem cells that Khan promotes, they were unequivocal. If Khan was calling these Muse stem cells, then they were counterfeits. Writing,
"This is certainly not a licensed MCI product. MCI DMC have never been sold or stored in tubes comparable to what the nurse is holding."
And wait, it gets worse because it doesn't stop at defrauding random biohackers. I cross-referenced the claims about the vials in Kim and Khloe Kardashian social media posts, and astoundingly, even the cells they received were counterfeits.
I know this product. It is a discontinued product. It's not from us. It has never been from MCI.
In other words, a smoking gun for fraud. Over the last 2 months, I've dug into the background of the world's most visible stem cell huckster. According to the records I've uncovered, he started out as a sports medicine doctor who worked his way up, selling weight loss drugs on online portals, through advising on, quote, science-based supplements on bodybuilding websites, to running fly-by-night stem cell clinics on 4 continents. And he's making a lot of people sick. For this report, I've spoken with patients who barely survived his treatments.
Whereas I was, in the gurney or, being wheeled in, I had a chance to speak to him on the fly. Right before I went in for the procedure, he changed the protocol.
I've combed through podcasts of wellness influencers who spilled the tea.
So I called Dr. Khan. I'm like, hey, something's wrong with Katrina. She doesn't sound right. And he's like, yeah, well, it's kind of normal, this and that. There's an immune response, 24 to 48 hours. I said, yeah, I don't think so. I said, she's going sepsis.
And I can't make this up. Even in court records in the legal case between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively.
And I just wasn't sure what the results would be. Because like everyone else, you see this stuff on social media and you're just not sure what's real and what's not.
He said he got stem cells in Cabo, so that's probably why he has an infection now.
We're going to inject stem cells in there to calm down the inflammation.
You got a janky-ass procedure from a strange-ass doctor in Mexico. You get what you paid for.
All the evidence points in the same direction. Something is rotten at the stem cell clinic to the stars. Or to put it another way, if 3 celebrities got serious infections at his clinic, how many ordinary people had similar outcomes, but their stories never reached the light of day? This is the 3rd video in a series on regenerative medicine, an area of science that claims to be on the verge of reversing just about any human ailment with a straightforward injection of stem cell ambrosia. It's about the lengths that people will go to pursue miracle treatments and the hucksters and charlatans who are more than willing to take advantage of the unregulated market. In my first video, Why Are the Wellness Elite Getting Sepsis?, I showed how Mark Hyman covered up the fact that he almost died from an infection after he got an injection at Khan's clinic. In the second video, I examined the case of Jordan Peterson, who almost died after trying a series of unapproved medical treatments from biohacking hucksters and shady doctors on at least 3 continents. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes to consume things in order, you might want to go check those out first. Then again, maybe you just want to go to the heart of the stem cell grift, in which case, you're in the right place. In this video, you'll discover who Adeel Khan really is, whether he's allowed to practice medicine at all, and the troubling pattern of sepsis that follows his treatments. Then, just when you think it is all making sense, I'm going to open up the inquiry into the entire field of stem cell medicine when I expose a whole black market of fake and counterfeit stem cells. That underground economy allows shady clinics to sell counterfeit stem cells for tens of thousands of dollars a pop in a business that more resembles old school organized crime than cutting edge medicine. But before we get to that, we have to ask, Who is Adeel Khan? On the advice of my lawyer, Sid Rao, and in the face of multiple legal threats that have already landed on my desk, it's important to start off this report with an obligatory disclaimer that I actually had in the first video too, and I've pretty much stolen word for word from the great CoffeeZilla. Thanks, Coffee. Everything I say on this channel and in this video series specifically is my opinion based on my own investigative work. Now, references to scams or fraud, counterfeits or lies, and related terms should not be taken as definitive findings of fact or legal conclusions. I've used publicly available information on and off the record interviews and independent analysis to draw strongly opinionated conclusions. Even so, there is a sharp distinction between the facts and evidence presented and the opinions drawn based on such material. No statement can or should be interpreted as a categorical declaration that any person has violated civil or criminal law unless a court has so ruled. I encourage viewers to examine my materials and reach their own conclusions. Furthermore, in the event of any substantial factual errors, it is my policy to issue corrections, which you can find in the pinned comment below and in the description. With that out of the way, you can tell a lot about someone simply by the company that they keep. And Adeel Khan isn't only comfortable carrying on with former drug traffickers, but also a who's who of biohackers.
Hey guys, I'm here in Mexico with Dr. Adeel Khan.
So Chris, we treated your shoulder in February in Mexico.
Celebrities like the Kardashians.
Why did Kim and Khloe Kardashian come to us for stem cell treatment?
And even Chris Hemsworth. And of course, whatever Tony Robbins is.
You know, some people say to me, why Dr. Khan? And I'd say, well,
okay, I have to cut in here for a second because this guy, Tony Robbins, has just been appointed by Dr. Oz underneath RFK Jr. to advise on reforming and reshaping American healthcare policy. And this is really, really crazy because he has no idea what he's doing. He has no medical background and... Why do we let the clowns drive the car? In the regrettable world of our collective social media Sharknado, credibility often rests on popularity and whatever the algorithm wants to throw in our direction. The constant celebrity endorsements of Khan's clinic lends him an air of trustworthiness that makes it easy to overlook his actual credentials. But it doesn't take long to see that Khan's medical background is wanting. According to his LinkedIn profile, he graduated from medical school at the University of Ottawa in 2015 and finished his residency in sports medicine 2 years later. Now, one of his first jobs was slinging online weight loss solutions while also freelancing at a clinic where he provided spinal shots for pain management. Then he moonlit as the chief medical officer for a company that uses shock waves to help relieve erectile dysfunction called onmen.ca. Incidentally, when I tried to go to that website just now, it actually redirects to a porn site. Anyway, he also took a role formulating supplements for weightlifters at a company called HD Muscle. Now, I know what you're thinking. Supplements, erectile dysfunction, pain shots? This sounds like exactly the resume you would expect to coincide with someone on the forefront of a scientific and medical revolution. Someone who heightens the already high standards we hold to people in the field of regenerative medicine.
Fun fact! There are no requirements in the field of regenerative medicine.
Oh, yeah, okay, but surely something as cutting edge as stem cell therapy requires some advanced training, right?
Yeah, no, it's just a marketing term.
But he has a medical license?
Excuse me. No, okay. Yeah, thank you. No, you can go a little further. Here we go. According to the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Ontario, he let his registration expire last year, meaning that he is not able to practice medicine there despite owning a clinic in Toronto. His LinkedIn profile says the Ontario Medical Association certified him in sports medicine, except when we checked it out, it turned out that they don't even issue sports medicine certifications. Not only that, but the College of Family Physicians of Canada told us over email that they never issued him a certificate.
Sure, but maybe these are just like administrative errors, right? I mean, he's a licensed doctor, right?
Yeah, that's not really clear. He doesn't come up on any US databases, and we couldn't access the databases in Abu Dhabi and Mexico.
All right, but he's qualified to play a doctor on TV.
Maybe on TikTok?
Okay, so licensed or not, it's clear that Adeel Khan is brilliant at marketing. After he worked his way up through supplement slinging and erectile dysfunction clinics, he was ready to make the leap over to selling the dream of regenerative medicine and stem cell solutions. He branded his practice Eterna Health before he had any brick and mortar offices. In order to see patients who found him on Instagram, though, he had to book office spaces at existing clinics and appeared at wellness events around the world, treating patients and then moving on to the next location after a few days. One patient, who I'm going to keep anonymous, told me that he traveled to Khan's clinic in 2023 after a seizure left him with a painful condition which caused part of his spine to degenerate. After a friend sent him Adeel Khan's Instagram profile, he raised money for a stem cell injection on GoFundMe. Khan demanded half the $16,000 fee up front, and my source sent him a check and then booked a ticket to Cabo. Incidentally, the price he paid in 2023 was pretty cheap compared to what it would become a year later. In this leaked email, Eterna Health quoted another patient $115,865 for a series of stem cell injections, but generously offered a 15% discount and no refunds. Anyway, now he was excited to get this state-of-the-art treatment, but the clinic, well, it didn't look like what he expected. This was a picture that he took from the outside. But he'd come this far. He put his reservations aside and went in for prep. And though they had been very keen to take his money, when he actually met Khan before the procedure, it wasn't clear to my source at all that Khan was even familiar with his case.
And I remember as I was, in the gurney or, being wheeled in, I had a chance to speak to him, and I reiterated, because the communication was so poor prior to the procedure, that L5S1 is where I got the surgery, but due to the, I didn't hear back from you in the past little while. I wanted to confirm that this is what we're doing, or this is where the pain is. And he goes, oh yeah, eh? And on the fly, right before I went in for the procedure, he changed the protocol. Instead of injecting the L5S1 area, he went ahead and injected directly in the cauda equina region, where my nerve damage was.
That's right. Khan appeared confused about what he was supposed to do and then decided on the fly to inject the entirely wrong region of his patient's spine. Khan predicted that his patient would be on the next flight home and said that he had an 80% chance of full recovery. But my source said that the procedure only made his condition worse.
And it was very painful, and basically it worsened my situation. It was already pretty bad, but I didn't think it could get worse, but it did.
While the patient would ultimately have to spend a month bedridden in Cabo before he felt well enough to get on a plane, Khan was already long gone the next day. Here is what Khan posted on Instagram just a few hours after that procedure was done.
Just finished our last day here in Los Cabos. I'll be going to Miami this weekend and doing some work there and hopefully getting this clinic finalized so we can start getting this project going, and hopefully it'll be done by the end of this year. And I'll be in Europe most likely in October, and then we're going to be doing a trip to New York City in October as well, and then we'll be in Dubai and Egypt in November, and then we will be in Los Cabos again in December. So a lot of people are asking where I'm going to be and what type of treatments they can get, so check out our website, eterna.health, for updates as well.
Unable to reach Khan for any sort of follow-up, my source said he had to find a local doctor to prescribe him antibiotics, and those antibiotics probably saved his life. And this seemed to be a pattern for Khan's early years as a stem cell supplier. Always on the move and always one step ahead of anyone who would be able to hold him to account for complications. But his social media fame was only growing. Soon, famous people started falling into his orbit. Here he is describing how he soon started attracting interest from some of the wealthiest men in the world.
The first time I went to Dubai was to treat this man named Mohammed Alibar. He's the owner of the Burj Khalifa and Emaar property. So he owns the 6 tallest buildings in the world, and he's the wealthiest man in Dubai, business-wise.
Shortly after that treatment, Khan opened up his first full-time stem cell clinic based out of Dubai. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that this was in part funded by an investment by Alabar himself. That clip I showed you, it's from a podcast by Sean Stevenson. The podcast is called Model Health Show. And if I'm correctly decoding the interconnected web of manosphere podcasts, then Stevenson is also the host of the Mind Pump Show, where Khan has also been a guest. And this is where it gets crazy, because one of the two other co-hosts over there is Adam Schafer, whose own stem cell journey with Khan sounds a lot like what happened to Mark Hyman from my first episode. Here he is talking about how his wife almost died from sepsis after she got a treatment from Khan.
So she went out there to do, I wouldn't say a routine, but a pretty, somewhat basic stem cell treatment, right? So she was doing it for her ovaries, for fertility. And, flew in the top surgeon in the world from Dubai to come do it. So she's in good hands. She's with Dr. Khan and all them. And so the best of the best is taking care of her.
Schafer bought into the social media hype around Khan that he helped create. He was under the impression that he had sent his wife to one of the most reputable stem cell doctors in the world. After all, Khan had been on his show. What better recommendation is there than that?
So I called Dr. Khan. I'm like, hey, something's wrong with Katrina. She doesn't sound right. And he's like, yeah, well, it's kind of normal, this and that. There's an immune response, 24 to 48 hours. I said, yeah, I don't think so. I said, I want a nurse with her. I said, so whatever it costs, whatever it takes, get a nurse over with her. I want someone staying by her side and at least measuring and checking her vitals until we can get her home to me or whatever. And he said, okay, no problem. We get that done. So they sent a nurse over there.
Just like with other cases that I've documented, Khan did not seem concerned about his patients getting sicker after treatment and more or less shrugged it off. Schafer again.
I have some of the most brilliant doctors that are friends of ours now at being able to text them. And so I'm texting everybody, sending them labs, explaining to me what's going on, this and that. And they're going, she's going sepsis.
Oh.
So, and for the audience that doesn't understand, that's like when bacteria gets into your bloodstream, and that's like life or death.
Yes. Oh, that's a 100% medical emergency.
Over the course of that episode, Schafer explains that the doctors in Mexico were eventually able to stabilize his wife enough that they could hop a flight back to the United States. And they thought she was okay, but then she relapsed again and was treated at a state-of-the-art hospital before she eventually recovered.
Scariest week of my life, hands down.
Now, interestingly, Schafer never connected the dots that his own wife's complications could have possibly been the result of malpractice. I reached out to the Mind Pump team for comment, but they never responded. In fact, Khan is still welcome in the Mind Pump media ecosystem. My guess here is that they are either unaware of exactly how many cases are coming out of his clinic, or so overwhelmed with confirmation bias and the chance that treatments that they have recommended on their channel could be hurting members of their audience that follow their advice, that they choose to ignore the evidence right in front of them, even when it gets the people who are closest to them sick. The same might also be true for the actor and director Justin Baldoni. Now, before I began reporting on this piece, I had never actually heard of Baldoni before, but apparently he's a bit of a heartthrob and had recently gotten into litigation with Blake Lively, and people are passionate about that story. I mean, he also sued the New York Times for defamation. Regardless of all of that, he's a well-known connoisseur of regenerative medicine because of chronic back pain. Here he is in 2020 in Colombia getting a stem cell injection while singing charmingly into his phone to his child, and then posting it on social media.
I love you, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, oh, I feel it.
So right after he got that injection, he gushed in his social media posts about how he could feel the new life energy from the stem cells entering into his body.
There's a powerful energy in these stem cells, man. This is new life.
He felt like he was on the road to recovery, but apparently it didn't stick. He was still, just a few years later, looking for some way to fix his degenerated discs. So a couple of years later, he took to social media to find a new doctor and ended up on Khan's doorstep.
So about 9 months ago, I reached out to Dr. Khan, who is at the forefront of stem cell technology. I have some damage to the cartilage and meniscus in both knees. He injected both my knees with stem cell. He also gave me an injection into my shoulder because I had some arthritis in my shoulder. And I just wasn't sure what the results would be because like everyone else, you see this stuff on social media and you're just not sure what's real and what's not.
That joint is arthritic and it's inflamed. So we're going to inject stem cells in there to calm down the inflammation and to prevent the arthritis from getting worse and obviously repair some of the damage that's been done. We also combine them with peptides, which enhance everything. Making sure we're putting in the right spot is also a big deal.
On August 28th, 2024, Khan's clinic put out a press release that they were officially treating Baldoni's back. And you're going to be shocked by this. I know. It wasn't long until Baldoni was in the hospital recovering from an infection. Now, again, I have no interest in celebrity infighting, and I know people have strong emotions about it. But the discovery published in the court case actually revealed interesting chatter about the infection. One document states, and I'll quote, "Rather than truthfully acknowledge why the entire cast refused to promote the film with the director or launching an investigation, Abel, Baldoni, and Heath brainstormed possible cover stories, including a recent hospitalization to treat an infection from spinal stem cell treatment in Mexico." And that stem cell infection comes up again in the text messages between his crisis PR team. Stephanie Jones.
He said he got stem cells in Cabo, so that's probably why he has an infection now. Jesus.
Jennifer Abel.
Yep.
Stephanie Jones.
Idiot.
Jennifer Abel.
You don't get stem cells in Mexico.
Stephanie Jones.
Who goes to Mexico for this?
Jennifer Abel.
And then agrees to post about it so that he gets it for free.
Matthew Mitchell.
When it's free for him, we know that. He does the sketchiest shit to his body and says that his outside reaction is due to stress. No, baby boy. It's because you got a janky-ass procedure from a strange-ass doctor in Mexico. You get what you paid for.
Obviously, he's no longer working with that PR team. However, the point they raise is quite important. One reason that Khan works with celebrities is so that he can put out press releases that use their names, which ultimately brings in more ordinary patients into his practice. It's all top-of-the-funnel lead generation. It's why so many celebrities who have had him on their podcasts also show up in his various videos getting stem cell treatments.
Hey guys, I'm here in Mexico with Dr. Adeel Khan. I'm about to do VEGF gene therapy.
I mean, I think we can assume that a lot of this is done quid pro quo, with no actual money exchanged. After all, this is sort of an unspoken rule of celebrity economics. You probably already know that America's healthcare system is a steaming pile of garbage. And the reason for this, at least in part, is because our private insurance industry drives premiums up and prices up in an ever-recurring cycle where health insurance, like just getting coverage, is hard for any normal person to attain. 2 years ago, I switched away from my normal insurance policy that was costing me almost $1,000 a month with a $14,000 deductible, which basically mean I didn't have any real coverage, to move over to a company called Crowd Health, which is something like more like a health share system. Think of it as a giant community of people who are pooling money together every month, usually under $300. In fact, I think $300 is the most they have ever charged per month. And then if there's a problem, the most you'll ever pay out of pocket is $500 per incident, per bus hit, which is a pretty good deal for a bus hit. If you are interested in finding out more, go to joincrowdhealth.com and you can use my discount code. My code is Carney for a reduction in your first couple months of premiums. The only reason I would sponsor Crowd Health is because it is something that I actually use. It is my personal healthcare plan, and the more people who join, the more secure it is. So go find out more. My code is Carney. Let's get back to the video. While I was the first person to report publicly how Mark Hyman got sepsis from treatments he received from Khan's Eterna Health Clinic, basically all of the top influencers and longevity scientists already knew what had happened. They just decided to keep it secret. For instance, who do you think Andrew Huberman is talking about in this clip from last month in a conversation he was having with Gwyneth Paltrow?
And there's a very public-facing physician who paralyzed himself with a stem cell injection into his spine recently.
Oh, no.
Don't get stem cells injected into the discs, I was told, because the discs can't receive stem cells.
Oh, boy.
But he went to a clinic. He was paralyzed.
I don't understand the point of keeping all of this under wraps. If all of these health influencers knew about the dangers and potentially deadly outcomes, they could have put their energy into actually warning their audiences about this clinic, which was a known danger. I mean, it's kind of stunning that 3 of Khan's celebrity clients actually came down with serious bacterial infections that led to hospitalizations. I mean, if Khan can't step up his safety protocols for people with immense power and fame, then I shudder to think what his complication rate is with ordinary people who just come to his clinic. This is, of course, a question that is almost impossible to answer. Khan moves across international borders with ease, and no regulatory authority has the logistical ability to keep track of the complications that originate in his clinics. The only people who actually know what is going on inside Eterna Health are the employees who receive the complaints, and very few of them are talking. I mean, I know because I asked. This is a very similar problem that I ran across while reporting my book, The Red Market, on the trail of the world's organ brokers, bone thieves, blood farmers, and child traffickers, where I quite literally traveled all across the planet tracking criminal actors who bought and sold human body parts. Now, organ traffickers benefit from the ability to split their crimes across national borders and easily run circles around law enforcement. I called it the red market because, unlike traditional black and white markets, moving biological materials raises additional ethical questions about where human-derived materials come from and where they end up in clinical treatments. Now, at the end of the book, I suggested that the only way to break apart red markets is to introduce radical transparency into all legal human tissue pipelines, because the criminals are almost always able to hide behind a facade of medical privacy. For instance, if you want to know if the kidney you received from a transplant is legal, then it would be nice to be able to legally track it down to its source. Instead, they say, oh no, we can't do that because it harms patient privacy, and thereby often giving the cover story to actual criminals who are stealing human body parts. Stem cells are, of course, also human-derived materials. They often come from the umbilical cords of newly born children. And if they're being sourced criminally, then there are potential victims at the beginning and the end of that supply chain. So let's get into that part. Well, it seems that Khan's clinic has a high rate of complications, at least if you happen to be a celebrity. We don't quite know how those complications originate. I mean, as I see it, there are three potential vectors that explain how things got so far off the rails. The first is that Khan, maybe he has just no idea how to properly sterilize his operating room. I mean, for instance, in this clip of a stem cell procedure that he was performing on a 77-year-old fitness influencer with the handle Train with Joan, you can see him grinding a needle into her bone.
See, now I'm anchored. I'm just going slowly into the bone.
One commenter who describes themselves as an RN saw this photo and then asked why there was no protective bib around the injection site, saying that it's not sterile. That could be true in some cases, and I've asked various doctors if a bib is really required, and I've gotten conflicting answers. Some say yes, and some say no. But it could be an indication that he failed to do other sterilization procedures too, like preparing the area with an antibacterial solution like iodine. Others have mused that perhaps non-sterile water that they used to clean their various equipment was used. And there is no way, of course, to be sure, but my gut, in the heart of my hearts, I actually don't think that this is where the bacteria is getting in. Sterilization is very well taught across the world, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and think that he hopefully got this part right. It's very basic. Which means that the second possibility is that there is a problem in the way that Khan actually stores his stem cells. And I've spoken with 4 different doctors who handle stem cells regularly, and they all agree that storage is much trickier than you might expect. To paraphrase one doctor who asked me not to use his name, the stem cells were probably stored in a liquid nitrogen tank, and we tell everybody all the time you can't store cryovials in the liquid nitrogen phase of a liquid nitrogen tank. It has to be stored in the gas space because they leak. The liquid nitrogen can get in, and they are almost always contaminated by E. coli or some other bacteria. Now, I had no clue that there was a real difference between the liquid in the liquid nitrogen and the gas above, so that's not like immediately intuitive, at least to me, a non-doctor. Considering Khan's habit, though, of constant traveling, there are lots of potential opportunities for storage procedures to fail to meet up to the highest safety standards, especially if he's actually traveling with those stem cells. Even a small error can create an environment that allows bacterial proliferation. And who knows, maybe he's got a frozen package of stem cells in his carry-on or checked luggage. And this is not going to shock you one bit. A former employee at Eterna Health said that this is pretty much exactly what he did, sending this photo of his process to me to back up the claim. Transporting stem cells in a cooler and a frozen pack with him on flights between Mexico and Canada, and then, if he hadn't used them all up, repackaging them again and taking the same shipment with him to Dubai. Now, for cells that need to be stored at a consistent negative 80 degrees, this all but guarantees spoilage. And even with all of that going on, there is still a third way that his cell lines could transmit bacteria. Maybe the stem cells he is actually using don't come from legitimate sources in the first place. In fact, it's an issue that he often talks about on his various podcast appearances. Here he is with Gary Lineman, aka the Human Garage, about how his success is built upon the superiority of his product.
Most people know about it because of the Kardashians and Chris Hemsworth. Like, I've treated them and they've talked about it publicly, so that reached hundreds of millions of people. But the problem is the margins on using Muse cells is much lower because they're expensive. Like, for me, they're expensive to just purchase from the manufacturer. Right. So these are what are called Dizawa Muse cells, which is from the Japanese scientists who discovered them and the company that owns the patent.
Right, that name, it is really important. Mari Dizawa's Muse stem cells are the current Cadillac of the stem cell industry. Now, I did an interview last week with Matt Kabeline, a longevity scientist, talking about how they might be the breakthrough that everyone has been looking for.
Muse stands for multi-lineage differentiating stress enduring mesenchymal stem cells. So that's where the Muse comes from. It's a breakthrough from a biological perspective because this was kind of the first indication that mesenchymal stem cells are actually a whole bunch of different types of stem cells. And you could get these very specific Muse stem cells from this mixed population, and they have interesting properties.
I pressed Kabeline here on whether those properties really matched the marketing hype.
So to answer your question, promising but very, very early. And again, my intuition is this will be sort of a step breakthrough, but it's not, again, going to get us to the point where everybody's getting stem cell therapies to get younger. Like, it's not going to have that large of an effect. But I do think that these Muse stem cells will have specific indications where probably 10 years from now, you'll start to see them be routinely used in different clinics.
So essentially, they're still experimental, but potentially promising. Even so, as Khan notes, there is a limitation to using them.
We work directly with that scientist to get these cells, but they are pricey. And so your margins aren't going to be as high as using the old stem cells, where way cheaper. So people, unfortunately, for them, they're just like, we're making good money, we don't care,
Which is to say that a doctor could save money if they didn't want to pay the full freight of $5,000 per officially certified vial of Dizawa stem cells.
And then a lot of consumers just don't know. They're just going in, they're thinking they're getting stem cells, they're going to make their body younger because the doctor's telling them that, but it's all, unfortunately, it's all a lie.
That's right, Adeel Khan, who, if you think about it, whose name sounds a lot like Adeel Khan, said it.
Unfortunately, it's all a lie.
Khan is indicating that he is in fact aware of the enormous black market for counterfeit stem cells. After all, if the open market is generally unregulated, and if you don't actually need any special certifications to call yourself a stem cell specialist, and the customers don't really know the difference anyway, then why couldn't you just sell the idea of miracle-inducing stem cells and then just put whatever you want into the patient? Most people, they would never know. And I'm really talking about anybody here because even Kim and Khloe Kardashian didn't get what they thought they were getting. According to Kim's post on August 8th, 2025, Khan injected both she and her sister with Dizawa Muse cells. The description even included that little trademark sign. But the package, well, it looked weird. And you can see here that it specifically mentioned Muse cells. So I called up Dominic Duscher, the chief medical officer at MCI, who makes the cells, to ask him about it.
That is basically an MSC product that has been in the market, I think 2024 to 5, but it's not available anymore. It's discontinued, and it's not from us. It has never been from MCI.
So this is not, you would say this is not Dizawa stem cells?
No.
If someone said that these were Dizawa Muse stem cells, you would say what to them?
I would say that these cells, this product, is in is not comparable to the original Desawa Muse cell, the DMC as we call it, because it's in the way it's made, it's produced, it's manufactured, it's not in a comparable fashion. So it's not an original DMC.
In the day and a half it took us to get to the bottom of the issue, word got back to Khan that I'd zeroed in on his fraudulent claims, likely through his RegenX manufacturer. And Khan's reaction was to immediately alter his original post, removing the picture he'd included of the official Desawa products from the carousel. But luckily, in a previous phone call, I'd preserved the original. Here's my best guess at what happened. RegenX had an earlier version of Muse cells stuck on ice at their lab, and for some reason, Khan did not have access to official Desawa cells on hand. So he substituted the old cells for the new ones because he didn't think anyone would notice. Alternately, maybe it was because he could lower the cost this way, because it's likely that the Kardashians weren't paying full freight for their treatments anyway. I guess the other possibility is that this lab, RegenX, actually has a whole counterfeit run of cells that it can sell on the cheap to other people. I really don't know. While the Kardashians didn't have any side effects, at least that I know about, I did speak to another famous actress who also got Desawa stem cells the day before the Kardashians, also in Mexico, who told me that she had been suffering from an intense immune reaction from that treatment for like the last 9 months. Here's Dominic when I asked him about why that might be.
I know that it's not a Desawa Muse cell product, and Desawa Muse cells are characterized. One of their main features is to not cause any immune reactions. Mm-hmm. So if I hear that a person has had a severe immune reaction, it's close to impossible that it is from an original Desawa Muse cell product.
Which is to say that Khan appears to be capitalizing on people's ignorance about stem cells, and that ignorance has the potential to lead to pretty serious consequences. And we've gotten this far. Is there any shock that Mr. Garage has no ideas what stem cells look like? Now, in the reel that Khan posted to his Instagram, you can see Lynham and Khan admiring this frozen vial of, well, what exactly? I mean, it looks like something between a horse suppository and the worst popsicle you ever tasted. And the message on the screen suggests that they are, in fact, stem cells. And later in the video, Khan talks about how important official Desawa cells are. Lyman is shown then, right afterwards, getting a decidedly brownish IV. Now, I think any reasonable observer would assume that the brown popsicle is somehow related to the treatment they are both promoting. So I reached out to Mari Desawa's company in Japan to see if these look like something that her lab would produce. Her chief medical officer, Dominic Duscher, wrote back almost immediately. It was in an email, but here is an appropriately Germanic-sounding voiceover.
This is certainly not a licensed MCI product. Our Desawa Muse cell products are sold by the labs in 2R/3R vials and all have clear labeling/counterfeit protection. MCI DMC have never been sold or stored in tubes comparable to what the nurse is holding, so we can guarantee that this is not from MCI-related manufacturing pipeline.
Which means that if Khan told Lynham that these were Desawa cells, then they were counterfeits. The unmarked frozen package could be almost literally anything. I tried to find out from one source I spoke with who works in the regenerative medicine field, and he says that maybe it was frozen umbilical cord blood, the upstream raw material that Muse stem cells ultimately come from. One person who should know for sure, though, would be Gary Lynham himself. After all, he was the one getting the treatment. And I wrote to Lynham and someone named Barb Wengeruk, I'm probably mispronouncing that, wrote back. We invite you to reach out to the company with your questions and inquire about the liquid contained in the vial. Which is a really just crazy response. You would think that Lynham would have at least some idea about what he was getting injected with and posting on these reels. I mean, but then again, maybe he just didn't care. His channel is predictably a bastion of health misinformation and conspiracy theories that seems to go hand in hand with his own criminal record for drug trafficking. Now, I should probably do a video specifically on him at some point because he is a whole thing. Let me know down in the comments. Anyway, of course, I did reach out to Khan's clinic several times, and I will go over their responses at the end of this video. First, though, I want to note that since I dropped my first video, I got several messages from Khan's patients who were skeptical of the provenance of his injections. One doctor, and we're just going to call him Dr. Eric, took his father to the Khan's clinic in Dubai. This was the email that he wrote me. During the consult, Dr. Khan assured me that they use Muse cells that were manufactured under the process developed by Professor Dezawa and licensed by her company. When I got my father there for treatment, we asked to see the certificate of analysis, and after asking a few times, he produced a document that certainly did not look like an authentic C of A. The vial containing Muse cells also had no stickers verifying it was authentic Muse cells. Between that and some rumors we heard around Khan's lack of follow-up care, it made us abandon the treatment. I have to give this guy credit where it's due. Most people would not have the nerve to turn away from a treatment that they flew across the world to get at the last second like Dr. Eric did. Heck, most people would not even know that they could check for a certificate of authenticity. If the counterfeit hypothesis holds, then Khan might buy some official Dezawa Muse cells through official channels, but also keep a supply of cheaper alternatives on hand in case he runs out of the good stuff. Which brings us to the broader black market for stem cells. And this part really blew my mind because there are a lot of shady actors in this business. In August 2024, John, and I'm going to mess his name up, Koloshoren, pled guilty to charges of manufacturing and distributing so-called stem cell products under the brand name Regen, which led to 11 patients being hospitalized for E. coli in Florida, Texas, and Arizona. Now, according to the press release by the DOJ, this defendant recklessly put people's lives in danger, giving false hope to patients with serious illness. But just as that operation wound down, other stem cell charlatans popped up. For example, the FDA wrote a letter to Beeben Russell, who operates a stem cell supply company called Platinum Biologics, which, among other things, this letter stated that this letter is to advise you that your products are unapproved new drugs in violation of Section 505A of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And look, there have been no criminal charges filed in that case so far. But if you look at the Instagram presence of their team, you're going to see Beeben and the other founders posing like they are extras in an Andrew Tate reality show, bragging about their expensive sports cars, flying in private jets, while also posting how much they care about quality control. Now, hilariously, in those videos, they also complained about how much they had to spend on new testing equipment after the FDA started looking into them.
In this industry, most biologics companies hide behind the curtain. They hide behind reports, they hide behind language, they hide behind trust they haven't earned. And doctors are left like Dorothy, told to follow the yellow brick road to outcomes without ever knowing who's actually pulling these levers. That's not transparency, that's theater. So we made a different choice. We invested in in-house testing equipment. It was expensive, it was uncomfortable, but it was necessary.
That's a lot of transparency marketing speak. But I have to ask you, would you trust this man with your life? But we can do better than just pointing to a very scammy looking internet presence and actually look at lab reports that they sent out to clients in 2025 that were supposed to certify the sterility of their supply chain, because they raise serious doubts about what is going into their cells and how they're actually testing them. This, for instance, is an example of a stem cell sterility report sent out in 2025. But the test clearly shows that they were performed in 2020. To state the obvious here, stem cells are not meant to stay on ice for 5 years, and it's entirely more likely that they're using this certificate for a newer batch that they're just sending out to clients. It is noteworthy that the quote ordering professional section clearly looks like a bad Photoshop cut and paste job. But thanks to the power of citizen journalism, I actually posted this original document in my YouTube comment section, and I asked one of you to see if there were layers of the document that might reveal what the original said. And lo and behold, look at this. The original document showed that this company, Comprehensive Biologics in Gulf Breeze, Florida, was the person who actually had the original certificate, and they have since been shut down. Now, I looked that company up and learned that the owner of Comprehensive Biologics once worked at a company called Regenerative Labs, which is a company that also Beeben Russell later joined a year later. When I looked up the lab that issued the report, the customer service rep told me that Platinum Biologics and Comprehensive Biologics share the same customer account, which is V2091. And this is the sort of bureaucratic error that I came across repeatedly while tracking down organ trafficking networks. Hospitals and traffickers were more than happy to forge medical documents so that regulators and curious investigators would just trust the, quote, face validity of the paperwork. I mean, even bad attempts at forgery were often enough to get past regulators. And just when I thought that this part of the story was over, in a surprise twist, Beeben Russell actually called me after I released this original version of this piece on Substack, because doctors were sharing clips of my piece around. Beeben Russell of Platinum Biologics. That's right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
How'd you get my number?
I just pulled it. We do commercial real estate, so we have softwares. We pull addresses, cell phones, everything else.
According to Russell, he told me that the document was indeed forged, but that it had been forged by his competitors to sully his company's reputation.
Manufactured, I call it competition paraphernalia, which I already put a company on notice for. And I can send you the cease and desist out of Florida to it.
It's not for me to decide whether Platinum Biologics is a criminal enterprise or not. That determination would have to be left to a court. What I can say is that Russell is emphatic that his credentials in regenerative medicine depend mostly on his outsider status in the industry.
He was just pissed I was a dropout doing well, more or less. I'm 34 with no college degree, a ninth grade dropout. How do you think I got here? Like I said, I'm a ninth grade dropout retard. Even I know that.
I guess I'll leave that determination up to you. Either it's a sign of entrepreneurial success or a complete failure to enforce standards across the stem cell industry. Whatever the case, without getting into specific suppliers or distributors, an insider at one regenerative medicine clinic that I spoke with was happy to tell me that the going rate for an off-brand Muse stem cell package, one that claims to have the same efficacy of the official Dazawa brand, is just $500. That's 1/10 of what the official lab sells it for, which brings me to the largest problem of all. Stem cells are an experimental therapy that people seek out after they have tried usually every other modality out there. Despite the marketing, the reality is that stem cell science is still in its early days, with very few human clinical trials that show robust results. It could be that in the future, stem cell products like the Muse cells really will be breakthroughs. But we have to remember that the history of the pharmaceutical business is littered with the corpses of promising drugs that never went anywhere. In an ideal world, people will know that experimental treatments are inherently risky. And when they seek them out, they knowingly take that risk before they start treatment. It's what physicians call informed consent. And you can do this ethically. But the risks get magnified when prospective patients are also in the dark as to whether they are even getting a genuine treatment in the first place. The broader situation is so concerning that I can't honestly recommend that anyone, anywhere, put their trust into regenerative medicine at all. I can't suggest that you should even consider getting stem cells because we simply don't have the regulatory infrastructure in place to ensure that the treatment you ask for is the one that you get. This is the problem with black markets. It's like on-brand Louis Vuitton handbags and off-brand ones, except if you get the off-brand one, you really have no idea where it was made. Maybe it was mixed in a cement mixer for all you know. I'm certain, though, that some clinics, well, they do them right. There are clinics out there that don't cut corners, and their doctors really believe in the treatments, and they do their best to give you a sterile environment with the best possible stem cells out there. The problem is, I just don't know how a patient would identify such a clinic from the outside. And this is even more troubling because Adeel Khan has announced a partnership with a chain of health clinics across the state of Florida with a company called Relive Health.
A lot of people have been asking about Florida. We are hoping to be up and running by May. I know there's been so many delays. It's just because the USA made Muse cells have been difficult to make, and we cannot import them in, and they have to be made in the US, and this is the first time this is happening. So
as soon as that's ready, which should be hopefully in the next month or two, then we're going to launch a clinic.
He's able to do this because Florida recently introduced a new regulatory standard that made it easier to try experimental treatments so long as patients waive liability for unexpected outcomes. And my main question, though, is how he intends to get over the shortage of stem cells. What procedures are in place to stop complications from going? And is Khan even licensed to practice medicine in the United States? I couldn't find any evidence at all of that. Maybe Khan would be willing to show me his certificates. All right, it's been 3 months of hard reporting, and I just want to recap over a couple things because there's several things that I haven't told you yet, and the reason for that is in the course of talking to probably about 20 different people, about 10 of my sources were off the record or on background, which means that I can't tell you exactly who they were. Sometimes I can't even mention that the interview even existed. But I talked to a lot of people. And in my main official reporting, you can verify every source against the public record. I've usually included links to where things came from. I've shown you emails, or I've showed blurred out faces of people who agreed to go on that way. The information I'm going to tell you here, you just sort of got to trust me that I had these conversations with real people. But I feel like it's really important to tell you why I came to some conclusions, because not everything necessarily is going to be apparent to you when watching the video, and why I feel so strongly about, for instance, Mark Hyman getting sick. I had that confirmed by 5 different people before I made my case on how his podcasts didn't quite line up with what the record actually was. Now, the other thing is within Adeel Khan's business. One thing that came up in 2 different interviews from 2 different sources was the name of the bacteria that infected Mark Hyman's body. Now, you would think that with a septic infection, you would get something like an E. coli bacteria or a streptococcus, which lives, on the skin, sort of out there in general. But in fact, it wasn't that. It was this gram-negative bacteria that it was called Ralston, I believe. I'll put how it's spelled down below. And this bacteria is really interesting because it's endemic basically only to Mexico, which means that the contamination which entered in to Mark Hyman's spine eventually came through either contaminated tap water or perhaps upstream from the development of these Muse or otherwise stem cells that were created in maybe counterfeit labs around Mexico. We don't know for sure, but the interesting thing is that this is a very weird bacteria, and 2 different sources confirmed that for me. Now, another story told to me about the contamination was that a nurse, and I was told that it was actually Kimball Musk's registered nurse who was actually sort of moonlighting at Eterna Health in Mexico, saw a Mexican nurse or doctor tampering directly with the batches of stem cells that were in sort of cryo-freeze, siphoning them off, probably to maybe sell them elsewhere on the black market or do something with them. And when one of my sources said that they confronted Adeel Khan about that, he said, "Oh yeah, well I know about it, I'll take care of it." And this was crazy. Rather than replacing the batch that had been opened and sort of monkeyed with by some random person, the Adeel Khan actually just used it on other people, other patients the next day, possibly introducing more contamination. And this was one of the reasons why one of my sources left the employment at Eterna Health and started their own thing. And then multiple sources from different people in the industry said they suspected that Adeel Khan was breeding Muse stem cells on his own in his own facilities. And one of the things they said is that when you start breeding cells, specifically Muse stem cells, you only get a certain number of generations before they lose their potency and they become more susceptible to tampering. Obviously, if you're pulling cells out and putting them back in, there's just more opportunity to introduce problems. And they said that this was happening at his Dubai lab, which actually coheres with that weird vial that we saw that they were purportedly saying were Muse stem cells. And there's one more thing. In 2023 or 2024, one source told me that 10 patients went to Eterna Health for brain problems. They wanted stem cells injected into their brain. And out of the 10 people who went to see Adeel Khan, who had this injection, and he personally injected brain stem cells, out of those 10 of them were hospitalized, and several had debilitating strokes that they will never recover from. In another instance, a person had kidney failure, and they'll go be on dialysis for the rest of their life.
The other patient that I do have direct knowledge of was referred to the same south of the border clinic by a doctor who's a longtime friend of mine. My doctor friend told me that the infection destroyed his patient's kidneys, and this guy's going to be on kidney dialysis the rest of his life. I do not have direct contact with the alleged other 20 or so infections from that same clinic. That part is hearsay, but only once removed. So, the truth will come to light.
Now, these medical records, of course, I was not able to independently verify. This is just the thing that I heard from someone who I do know was definitely connected with Adeel Khan. But these are the stories that are out there, which honestly, these should concern everyone, because these should be looked at by the police, not by an investigative journalist who has no subpoena powers, no ability to, examine these medical records. These are things that should be looked at by the police in Mexico, these by the regulatory authorities, and anyone working with Adeel Khan elsewhere. And I think they're very, very concerning. Although, we're going to put this caveat that these are sources that told me this stuff on background and off the record that you cannot independently verify, which is, as an investigative journalist, I wish more people had the courage to step up, because once I started putting out these reports, everyone wanted to talk to me. I mean, I got so many emails from so many different people, but not a lot of people had the courage to do the right thing. I think courage is a really, really important part of being an honest citizen, because the people, if you know something that happened at one of these clinics of some sort of malpractice that is literally putting people in like dire shape and maybe getting them killed, I think you have a duty to come out and do something and not just save your own hide and pretend it didn't happen. But that's just me. Okay, well, there's just one more thing to say in this video, and that's what happened when I actually talked to Adeel Khan. So let's get into that bit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I did reach out to Khan and Eterna Health multiple times over the course of reporting this series. Now, at first, Khan agreed to an interview, but after several weeks of gaslighting me, I decided that it probably wasn't going to happen, so I asked them directly over email about complications that I had been investigating with Mark Hyman and Jordan Peterson. Now, I'm guessing that by that time they knew what I was researching. Rather than respond directly, they eventually put me over to their legal team, a lawyer named David Mikhail, who has offices in Colorado and Puerto Rico. In one email, he wrote, "We are not able to provide specifics about patients, but I can unequivocally state that Dr. Khan has not ever performed spinal stem cell injection treatments for these patients. I am concerned about the veracity of your sources for this information, but at this time, we do deny the allegations." I was quite confused by that statement, because how can you unequivocally state that Adeel Khan has not ever performed spinal cell injections when both Khan and Hyman posted Instagram videos stating that is exactly what they did?
So Mark Hyman has severe spinal canal stenosis, severe facet arthritis. We had to use a combination of our engineered Muse stem cells and also Muse exosomes. We injected them epidurally using catheters. We also injected them into the facet joints.
I mean, it seemed like he was unequivocally lying to me in the face of direct evidence. And I wrote him as much, and he wrote back just a few minutes later. First of all, Mr. Carney, we owe you no obligation to respond or comment, but have provided you the courtesy of a response. Second, the PR you are referring to does not concede that Dr. Khan personally did stem cell injections on either patient. The pronoun used by Dr. Khan was not in the first person. All right, now when a lawyer decides that the best defense against misrepresentations is to start picking apart pronouns and sentence structure, you know that something is amiss. He is likely suggesting that the shot that got Mark Hyman sick was performed at Eterna Health, but not specifically by Khan himself, which seems, to me at least, immaterial when Khan is the founder and the face and the CEO of Eterna Health and is ultimately responsible for what happens at his company. This sort of lawyerly obfuscation made me think that it was probably not worth talking to Khan's team again. I don't like being lied to. I don't like being led astray. However, since I am sure that Khan is going to watch this video, I would be glad to extend Adeel Khan an invitation to come on my show and chat directly with me about the things that I've brought up in this series. I mean, maybe this was all a misunderstanding. Dr. Khan, I'll be standing by. Until then, that's my report on the dark side of the stem cell clinic to the stars. Thank you so much for coming along on the series about the pitfalls and promises of regenerative medicine. I learned a lot while researching this, and I'm thinking that I might do an even deeper dive into the black market for stem cells because I sort of only brushed the surface, and it reminds me of all that time that I spent investigating organ markets back at the beginning of my career. Let me know if that's something you want to see more of down in the comments, or maybe I should just look at Mr. Human Garage because there's a lot there. If you support this kind of investigative journalism and want to join the team, please consider signing up for my Substack at sgcarney.substack.com, and you'll be helping keep me on the air. And you can find a link to all that stuff down in the show notes and the description and the pinned comments. Now, I have been absolutely overwhelmed with the response to these videos over the last few weeks. Now, I knew that this investigation was going to spiral out of control right after I started. At first, I only wanted to dip my toes into talking about Hyman's sepsis case, and then all of a sudden, it blossomed into a full-blown investigation with sources on 3 continents and an ever-expanding number of victims. And I guess this is just what happens. Once you start pulling on the strings of a story, you never know how much is going to shake loose, which is a long way of saying that I really couldn't done this without your help. The tips that came in made something that was unreasonably large a lot more manageable, and I have actually just so much more material that I didn't even put in to this story. Thanks to all of you who helped me out along the way, the confidential tips, the links to social media, and even a clutch voiceover by Thomas Langnickel Pires, who lent me a great German accent to a rather boring email.
This is certainly not a licensed MCI product.
This has been a whole lot of fun for me to work on, and now I'm excited to clear my mind, and maybe I'm just going to take a much-needed break. Either that, or maybe I'll jump right into the next project, which right now could be me chasing tornadoes across the state of Colorado.
Here we go.
Stay tuned. This is going to be intense. From Fox to Us Inc. in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Investigates. Thank you so much to my supporters here on Patreon and on Substack and even on YouTube who make this work possible. It means the world to me that you're here. And if you want to get your name on the honor roll, all you need to do is sign up at the links down below. From Fox to Puss Inc. in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Investigates.